Recently, eBay instituted a blanket buyer protection program which they say will help buyers have confidence in the purchases they make on eBay. On the surface, this looks good, but as usual, eBay focuses on keeping its buyers at the expense of the sanity of its sellers.
It has not been publicized, but I found out about this unadvertised policy while in the midst of a claim we received over a cell phone that we purchased from someone that was not as advertised. We asked to return it. The seller said no, and we had to open a claim for item not as described. eBay responded very quickly that we can return the item to the seller and sent us a prepaid shipping label to use to return the item. After discovering the shipping label did not have the seller's address on it as the shipped to address, nor did it have our address as the return address, I had to call eBay. In discussing the issue with the CS rep, I was told it was an error and they were sending me a new shipping label. I inquired as to whether or not the seller would be nailed for the return shipping costs, and the CS rep said no, that this is a new and unadvertised policy that they have put into place. eBay will pay the return shipping costs on any item up to £150 in the event of an item not as described case. Yeah, right. The CS rep claims that these costs won't be passed on to the victim, I mean seller, but I have a suspicion if it's not at this time that they will pass these costs on to the seller eventually. Think about it. Their image is hurting already, and they've created a market where anyone can ship you anything they want as a so-called return, even a bag of dog shit, and you are out the original item and your money. Now they are going to pay the return shipping costs as well. Talk about making it easier for the scammers. And, in essence, they are taking away the seller's ability to prosecute these individuals. Granted, there is still the option of involving the police, if your local police actually pursue this kind of thing, but by making the shipping labels good for UPS or USPS, sellers will no longer have the option of pursuing mail fraud charges if the item is shipped back to the seller via UPS. I am feeling a very painful selling season coming about, since I am primarily a seller. While we know the rules and painstakingly follow shipping rules, PayPal rules, etc., this is giving scammers an easier avenue for fraud. They've got nothing to worry about. Not much chance of getting caught. eBay's buyer protection program prevents buyers from losing money on fake eBay auctions, but may facilitate scams against sellers.
Because it's difficult, sometimes impossible, for a seller to invalidate a buyer's claim, sellers can now fall victim to eBay scams by buyers. eBay's buyer protection program requires a buyer to return an item to the seller after it decides a case in his favor, but issues a refund immediately. Should the seller then discover that the buyer sent him a box used il Dios, rather than the computer he originally mailed out, he has little recourse to recover the lost funds.
This is my most recent transaction I had with an unreasonable buyer. I spent many hours trying to work this transaction out with him, and all he wanted is more money. I consider this time in particular pretty bold, since buyer was boasting arrogantly about how I don't have a chance with any part of his dispute. He copied the discussion with an eBay staff and arrogantly showed me the conversation. In addition to the extortion, I noticed the weight on the label stated 69 pounds. That can't be all of my wheels, as my receipts when I shipped him the wheels 116 pounds, so how can the wheels lose that much weight? Whoever approved this buyer's case clearly has no compassion for me, the seller, or eBay. Buyer protection just did not read the full dispute. The outcome in this matter goes against eBay's own policy. How am I supposed to feel about selling anything on eBay again if I follow the eBay policies, and it does not matter at all if I am an honest seller that has accurately described my listing according to eBay's policies? I also stated no returns, as I can't afford to have a dispute that costs over $150 to ship and eat the shipping. Also, the final value fees eBay still keeps. That's why I am honest and careful as possible when selling my items. It does not make any difference, as the buyer always wins even against eBay's guidelines. Back when I listed the item, I described accurately and consistently throughout the listing. UPS lost part of the item, one used wheel. UPS found the wheel. I worked with the seller though out this time. During the time UPS lost one of the 4 used wheels, buyer insisted on seller to pay over 6 times the value of lost item. I have proof in emails. Seller admitted in the resolution process the wheels he received were as described as I listed in the one wheel UPS lost found and shipped. The wheel was scratched cosmetically but not severely damaged beyond usability. I did state wheel had cracked flaws and are used in the auction. I with pictures of the damage in the auction. However, I still then offered buyer 50% off the scratched wheel. He wanted way more money. The wheels are still as described under eBay guidelines. Again, my listing stated wheels were used with abrasions, road rash, and scratches on them. This dispute was created for the reason of buyer trying to extort more money from seller due to UPS mishandling one of the 4 wheels that was found and delivered to customers still in the eBay guidelines as accurately described.
I have many horror stories as well dealing with unjust UN fair and just plain UN honorable eBay. It is a big racket, and not worth the stress. There is nothing worse than following all the eBay guidelines when selling the item, and somehow the buyer could still win the dispute under unfair measures. This in return costs the sellers enough stress and money to where it is just not worth the risk to sell on eBay anymore. Also, the selling fees and final value fees eBay may keep. Their fees are unreasonable. I will just end the relationship with eBay. It's eBay's own fault. 10 millions of sellers are becoming very bitter about selling on eBay. Not a wise choice for eBay to bite the hands that feed them. eBay can go to hell.
Yep, I agree. The hell with eBay.